when we talk about innovation and potential. So, a few stats. Google's market cap roughly about 4.5 trillion. If you look at Nvidia companies, all these US deep tech companies around between 4 to 5.5 trillion dollars, which is equivalent to the entire market cap of Indian companies, listed companies. So there is a one US tech company, multiple many such companies there, and they're equivalent to entire the market cap of India. So that raises a question as to what these companies are doing differently. And obviously, the answer is that they're producing something which the world needs, which is deep tech, which is AI, which is chips. Recently there was a headline, I think 3-4 days ago, that Taiwan surpassed, India's sort of, market valuation. Right? Taiwan is such a small, country, and when we talk about India becoming the third largest, so that's again primarily because of one company that manufactures, designs chips. Probably it's only going to be, momentary, and eventually India, of course, because of its strength, it will surpass. But the idea is that raises the question and importance of deep tech innovation producing something that the world needs. So that's very important. India certainly is doing good, but needs to do better, especially given our 1.5 billion population, and they need jobs. Number two stat that I would like to say is that, and we talk about, what is deficient in the curriculum, how all the other B schools, second tier, third tier, and which is fine. We need to continuously sort of, discuss all of that. But if we look at data, hard data, right, the amount of grads that are coming out of Indian higher education, degree programs, and you talk about all, BTech, you take all the MA, BA, you take MBA, you take, BCom, all the degree programs, roughly about upwards of 1 crore every year. That number of grads come out of these degree programs, and the number of white collar jobs that the economy generates every year. Want to take a guess? Rough figures, I don't have exact figures. What's the 2 million, about 20 odd lakhs, right? Roughly that. So you have upwards of 1 crore, grads coming out of the degree programs, all the undergrad, masters, combined public, private. And the number of white collar jobs is about 15-20 lakhs. There might be slight variation. And in that jobs which actually can absorb freshers, because when you talk about, grads coming out of the degree, most of them are freshers. I mean, in IIMs, I think many of the students, percentage-wise, who are doing MBA would have little to zero work ex. Probably for the top tier, IIMs, that might be slightly different, but generally speaking, right, there are about 22 IIMs right now in the country. Same for BTechs from IITs, obviously, given the nature of the degree, no work ex, right? So out of those, 20 lakh jobs being created, roughly about, just a guess would be about 1/4 would be where freshers can apply, because many of the jobs require some sort of an expertise, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years work ex. So, एक तरफ तो आपका, number of grads that are coming from the Indian higher education system is about 1 crore, upwards of 1 crore, and you have about 5 to 10 lakh jobs, white collar, getting generated. So, and as I said, we should keep talking about the curriculum quality and how to bridge the gap and this and that, which is fine. Let's continue to do that. If all public-private institutes immediately become IIT, AIMS, IIM type institutions, the gap is still there. That 90 lakh, 1 crore delta, that delta is still there. So there is no way the economy can absorb that many degree holders. That's the reality. And we don't talk about that much. So even if suddenly every institution, public, private, becomes ISB, IIM Ahmedabad, IIT Bombay, IIT Delhi type institution, great faculty, great infra, that data is still there. So the point of the matter, the government can do so much. Government is doing its bit. But the point of the matter is that, collectively we need to think about it. And the point is that we need entrepreneurs to create Google, Nvidia type companies that not only make the country stronger, but also create jobs. Right? So 2 data points I said, why innovation deep tech is so important. One, of course, this delta that I talked about. Secondly, the fact that even small companies, countries like Taiwan have surpassed India's market cap. So Blinkit 10-minute delivery is all fine. I go to US, I was in a MIT, sort of a session, and they couldn't believe that you can order a hairdryer in 10 minutes. I said, this is absolutely, this is like very normal, right? This is no problem at all. 10 minutes now the government has pushed in, so they don't but most of the location they deliver in 10 minutes, right? So they couldn't believe it. So what I'm saying is that most of the startups in India essentially saying 10 minute ka 15-minute kar denge. What ice cream flavors, there are new ice cream but we're not talking deep tech at all, right? And what we have seen in this geopolitical situation is that your economic might, your economic heft translates to your military heft. The fact that US can't do anything about China is because, वो आगे दिखाते हैं तो China भी आगे दिखा देता है, right? So India means it's a strategic importance. It's a national imperative, and I'm just trying to say that innovation in deep tech and all of this is so important. So compliments to the IIFT. Now, what we need to do different. Most of the higher education institutions, without confining myself, even though I'm a dean of a business school, and most of the people come here from a business school background. When we talk about entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurship is as much about the curriculum as it is about the mindset. My take is that it's more about the mindset than the curriculum. In business schools, we talk all about management, finance 101, marketing 101. So all the fundamentals we anyway teach. It's just that people who are doing that, they don't have the mindset, that risk-taking mindset, right? Now, that is something that we need to discuss. But the other part of it, and I'm also privy about the time, so I'll just keep it very short. I won't give opportunity and more here from my other learned colleagues as well. But if you take IITs, you take IIMs, you take all the top institutions, people who are delivering the content inside the classroom who are teaching, they are themselves not entrepreneurs. So, if you talk about making entrepreneurs out of that system, they are, by the way, let me tell you, they are excellent scholars, some of the top researchers, great academics, but they are not entrepreneurs. They're not meant to be entrepreneurs because, so the point I'm trying to say is that, you expect somebody and some system to churn out entrepreneurs, but the entire system is not aligned to that. So doing one course or two course, 8 credit, 10 credit, and most of the institutions doing some fantastic job there. But what I'm saying is that it's a mindset problem. It's also about the problem that the entire system is not aligned to entrepreneurial thought, right? Because people who do entrepreneurship are cut from a very different they come from a very different background, right? So we also need to think on those lines. I'll stop here and I'll give the opportunity to other colleagues to also speak.
Thank you so much, Mike. You talked about entrepreneurial mindset, and yeah, we all know. I think anyone who has been to Harvard or any of the Western business schools, fundamental difference between those schools and our schools is the absence of incubation. I remember being there. So, even in my last visit during 18-19, as big is the academic block, equally big is the incubation block. So, how could we not do it? So, over to you, Ramji, and how can we have more of such facilities, ecosystems on our campus?
I think I will build on what Professor Shailesh and Mike shared. First of all, thank you so much for being so patient. 6 o'clock, death overs batting is very painful. I'm thankful that you're all there, and this room makes you feel better than the big hall. And yes, sir, Joshi ji, आपका जोश का कमाल हम देख रहे हैं पूरे दिन से in every session. So thank you so much, sir, for inspiring us. And we are learning how to be patient and how do you steer from the front and lead from the front and motivate your team. Thank you so much for making me part of this conference. 1956, a story that started by treacherous 8 in California. Land was abundant, no factories, no ecosystem. 7, 8 folks who were not happy with their boss came out and they started this journey of semiconductors and then ICs and then the rest is history where it turned into a barren land or a vast landmass into a Silicon Valley, which we all celebrated. Most of the world-changing technologies come out of that place. This is a single most impactful example that the world has seen, where few people with innovative approach and the risk-taking appetite can can not just create a company but an entire ecosystem for decades to come. As Vinitaji suggested, India has lost many waves. We lost because we were watching the waves, but we were not prepared to ride on them, to surf on them or take a deep dive. Last 40, 50 years of the way our education system has evolved, we keep criticizing. It's very fashionable to criticize, but I see a positive side of it. We have built step by step, decade on decade. And today we are talking about our talent pool that we generate brings in tech fluency, culture fluency, and global perspective. The problem with us is the numbers are so humongous. We always look at 98% failed, but we are not celebrating the 2% who succeeded. This 2% never existed few decades ago. I'm also reminded of a statement made by Michael Porter a decade and a half ago, almost 2010, some interview. Somebody asked this whole century of formalizing management education. There was no management education earlier. It was all trade and economics and all. So where do we go from here? What is the future of management as a discipline? He said management would be in a new avatar where the ability to weave business models around social challenges. That would be the new avatar of management education, management practice. Here we are talking about entrepreneurship. Here we are talking about innovation. In a country like India, especially when students come for management education, short 2 years, essentially it is 1.5 years, promoting entrepreneurship in them would be futile because that duration is not sufficient to experiment, immerse, and come up with some path-breaking solutions. Long duration programs like BTech or BBA or integrated programs where a student has 3 to 5 years journey with the institution, we can hope to create some promising entrepreneurs with not only entrepreneurial mindset, but also entrepreneurship in action. Now, we always treat entrepreneurship more as a syllabus, ki X number of hours of intervention, but it is more of a mindset as Mind suggested, and we all acknowledge it's not new. It is to be learned in action, cannot be taught. So experimentation should be part of culture on campus. Immersive learning has to be part of the campus in everything that we do. So what it calls for is not curriculum alone, it calls for a complete ecosystem. It starts with policy. Is your institution having a policy to promote entrepreneurship? What does that policy enable? What kind of resources we have committed? What is the commitment from the top management, especially from the private institutions perspective? Then, do we have faculty members who are, if not entrepreneurs by themselves, are they trained and sensitized to be mentors, spot talent, and then say, hey, looks like you have that problem-solving mindset. So we will incubate, you will help you. experiment with your ideas. Are we connecting with startup ecosystem which is thriving? The challenge would be, yes, those who are in Delhi, NCR or Bangalore or Hyderabad and all, they have advantage of a very, very thriving startup ecosystem where you can borrow or you can bring the expertise from startup ecosystem with their success and failure stories into the classroom or into the campus, engage with them. It can be both way mobility, where students go to startups and work with them for 3 months, 6 months, extended period, or the startup folks can come to campus to create that ecosystem there. So it is policy, faculty sensitization, engagement with the startup world, and mentorship by corporate. All this has to be part of your model of delivery. It can be embedded into the curriculum, or it can be an additional what you call component that a student go through during his tenure of study at the campus. Unless you have that, and on top of that, there has to be a financial commitment also. One quick example I will share and rest my comments. At IIM Gurgaon, IIM has been promoting entrepreneurship and innovation as a core pillar of its system. 1.5 years ago, when we started with policy and all, and we said those who come up with the idea to work, we'll give you a grant of X amount, no questions asked. Go experiment, spend it. We will not ask you questions. And we also made an arrangement where a computer science guy would work with management guy. On our campus, I have 2 startups right now, which I am pitching to some real top clients to sell their products. One is on quantum, who has made a presentation to some of the top startup folks. One is in biotech. This is out of 25 students who approached. So 23 failed. But I'm celebrating these 2. And this is creating kind of a ripple effect. I think we all have to make small little steps. We all realize the fact that entrepreneurship is the solution for absorbing the scale that Mike elucidated. The numbers that we generate through our education system, we have no way that the employment generated by industry or government can absorb even 10% of it. There is no other way but for entrepreneurship, but for innovation. Can we spot? India is always touted as the use case capital of the world. Can we build businesses around those use cases, businesses around those social challenges, and use the local issues to address global issues? With that, I rest my comments. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. Sounds little gloomy because this expert gave us data that it's only about 20 lakhs or some 30 lakhs jobs they're getting created in the white collar. And even gentlemen suggested that times to come, even that would get treated by AI. So over to you, Professor Vijay, that how is your ecosystem supporting entrepreneurs, especially looking into the fact that you have been managing situations where it is, I think most of the students, they would be very meritorious, they would be very hardworking, fee structure is low. So could the organization push them towards entrepreneurship? If yes, how?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Before I start, I think I need to thank Professor Joshi, the magic he has, his personality, and the magnet that he carries, that he thinks he is able to bring all people all across, bringing them together. I was sitting in the earlier session, and it is so nicely designed. Just after that session that we talked about andragogy and pedagogy, and we're now coming to innovation and entrepreneurship. I have some of my own takes. And when I was listening to fellow panelists, I was just thinking, I was reminded of 2 lines of a couplet. एक चीज गहरी थी जो दोहरी निकली, सुलझी हुई जो बात थी उलझी निकली, सीपी तोड़ी तो उसमें से मोती निकला, मोती तोड़ा तो उसमें से सीपी निकली. We are talking about the size of our country, the huge size, the way undergrad education is being imparted, and how business education was designed in our country. We, in the earlier session, we were talking about creating great, leaders, business leaders, which these schools created. And all across the world, you find people who have studied in India, came out of great business schools, and they are serving a great company. I think now the time has come when we need to relook at the whole model of business schools. And that model, and I'll come to the question that Nitaji asked about how the university and what the university is doing about. That model is, you are giving 2 years degree, but then in 2 years, what kind of flexibility you are allowing to them, whether they can drop out in 6 months and then come back, or 1 year they can take a break and then come back. A person who is entering a business school is entering for the placement. They should get a good placement. They're not entering business school as of now that they want to be great entrepreneurs, or they lack entrepreneurship skill, and that's why they want to learn entrepreneurship skill. I have my own reservations on this thinking, that really can business schools create entrepreneurs? As my fellow panelists were talking about, when we're talking about mindset, if there are youngsters, you read that book by Carl Dweck, where she talks about a rigid mindset, the fixed mindset, and the growth mindset. We move to growth mindset. And when we talk about growth mindset within business schools, here we are talking about entrepreneurial mindset. I'll tell you something which we did. We did some research on. In 2016, we had a startup action plan. 2018, we conducted a survey of entrepreneurs in the country. Around 890 entrepreneurs agreed to respond to our survey. And what we found, it was not really their entrepreneurial success that was determining whether they were going to continue with that kind of entrepreneurship. What was more important for them was that how they are enjoying what they are doing. So for them, entrepreneurial success was not financial return. It was basically what they were doing, whether they were really able to raise right questions, so that they were trying to find good answers. So the problem of today is that we need to inculcate those things in our students where we are able to develop them to have right questions, so that you can solve those problems. So in our research, we found out that hope and resilience were two of the great capitals that were determining whether they are going to stay with the kind of venture that they were continuing, or they will switch over, they will go back to what they were doing earlier, they will continue their studies and go into the field. So that is what we had our first-hand experience of doing some kind of academic research. Now, coming to the question that was put to me about Delhi University. Yes, Delhi University is a huge university. Delhi University also has incubation center. Delhi University has started experimenting with giving a drop in a semester. If a student wants, take a drop. If you are doing some venture somewhere, you can come back and complete your studies. Like DTU has been doing it before. Now, I think business schools also need to remodel themselves into that domain. I'm not too sure whether it is really they're doing or not doing, but I think if we move into that, it will be great. Some of the things which I thought are important, some of the key pointers, and those pointers are, rather than find solutions, you need to find questions, okay, the problems. So identifying problems is a greater challenge of today. And I think as a business school or as teachers, as students, that's more challenging today. Second is, means instead of creating employees to the world, I think fellow panelists were also talking about that. Instead of focusing on creating employees for the world, we need to create entrepreneurs. That maybe boost some sense, some energy into that domain. Instead of depending on the institutions, we need to empower the individual. Read Yuval Harari's book, Nexus, where he talks about how technology is empowering people, where people are individually starting getting. And we have great examples of that, whether people have YouTube channel or some other ways through which they are developing themselves. They might not have gone to great institutions, yet they are making good impact in society. Some of the ladies from the rural areas, they are making great impact. And that is how I think technology has played a role. And that is where, if at all that can intervene, it will be great. Then we need to have a lot of flexibility in the courses. And that flexibility can drive students to experiment and then take up entrepreneurship as a career. Instead of managing business, we need to have challenges of creating. And that is where I would rest, and maybe I will welcome towards the end if there are some questions. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
So if I heard you correctly, you talked about, the last part was very relevant, that flexibility. Many times we keep telling our students that midterm, assignment, quizzes, where is the time? And even if we have ideas, attendance norms, grade, flexibility, all that is too rigid in our systems. Though any academic administrator would really cringe, because the moment you loosen it up, there's always a reason for misuse. But then yes, if I remember correctly, BITS Pilani is a classic example wherein they have done a lot of flexibility, and we all understand that perhaps that is one institution which has very high percentage of successful entrepreneurship happening on campus. So, it's chicken and egg, that we make it flexible and then it will happen, or whatever. Yeah. So point is, but if you really listen to all of them, there's some concept which is mindset, risk-taking ability, resilience, all that we're talking. Is little food for thought is needed, that how do we inculcate it? Like I come from Bihar, currently, that because there are no opportunities around, the clinginess towards सरकारी नौकरी, मैं तो मजाक नहीं करती हूँ कि एक और चीज जिसके लिए लोग अपनी जमीन नहीं किडनी भी बेच देते हैं, वो है सरकारी नौकरी. And the first one, of course, continues to remain UPSC, at least in that part of the world. But yes, because their opportunities are so far and few. From the generation where we grew up, the opportunities were very far and few. Because for sure I understand that when I see especially my parents' generation, Britishers for sure left us in very dire straits. The survival was their question. So risk-taking was never the part of the agenda of that generation. And I keep telling everyone, that music, literature, everything is a reflection of that. So that is the time when most of the movies, most of the actors, most of the actresses were so hopeless. Like if I ask the Gen Alphas and Gen Zs, go and watch Mother India, they cannot even survive 10 minutes of it. Tragedy queen कहते थे हम उन टाइम की heroines को, because इतना hopelessness चारों तरफ था. And then came a stage where our parents came in, and then comes our generation, and then comes the next generation. For sure, the next generation is much more, I would say, fearless, much more high on risk-taking. But why is that it is not translating into entrepreneurial skills? The environment is not so constrained now. Why is that people are not taking that leap of faith? Why is that fear for failure is still so deep-rooted on campuses? As he might rightly said, that we continue to talk about 98% failure. Why don't we talk about 2% success? Why don't we talk that yesterday, okay, yeah, this year there is a dip, but last year there were 100 unicorns. So, what can we do as leaders to make it a little more, that mindset change? You being an HR professor, you will have a more deep insight on that.
Thank you. Let me just say, emotional intelligence, whatever has been the flexibility, mindset, and resilience, all this put together has been classified as emotional intelligence. And how emotional intelligence can be learned and enhanced, there is a practical tip for that. we learn by practice and feedback. So this is the experiment that we have to do of indulging into activity and then learn, and that's why coaches, mentors also help people develop if the initial practices do not work. So Daniel Goleman actually had come to India. I was also part of that conference. And he said, my lecture, if you attend, it will not make you emotionally intelligent. But whatever you do, if you practice, get feedback from your colleague, from your spouse, from your friend, and based on that, make improvement. That will help you. This is very simple plan.
What would be some practical suggestions how to make our campuses more?
I think, so, one of the things that I would like to point out here is that not every student wants to be an entrepreneur and not every student has to be an entrepreneur. So it's not like everybody will start becoming an entrepreneur. That's absolutely fine, right? So as I said, it's as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a very mindset thing. And we need to be able to be comfortable living like that, which means a lot of hustle, which means there are no 9-to-5 job lines, right? Which means that you need to be 24/7 available and all of that. Not everybody wants to be there, and that's perfectly fine. But people who are so aligned, I think, for us to be able to make the next Googles and Nvidias and Meta and Alphabet, which is Google's parent, and all of these fantastic companies are now increasingly Chinese companies. I think, the solution is not unidimensional. I think part of it is public policy, part of it, of course, is taxation, part of it, of course, lies in higher education. So there are multiple angles to it in order to make sure that students or Indians who are so interested, and Indians are very entrepreneurial. We have Pania community, and we have, in every region there are business communities who are so, so sharp in their business acumen, right? So it's not about talent, and Indians do fantastically well. The entire Silicon Valley, as somebody was saying, I think in the early session also, is headed by an Indian. So obviously, we can do it. We also can do large-scale projects. So that the entire Aadhaar system, it's such a fantastic success, driven by the government. There have been many such, successes at a very frugal sort of a, imagination and at such a vast level, which is India, right? So we obviously can do it, but I think the solution is partly public policy, partly taxation, partly higher education, so that we identify students who are interested, give them an ecosystem where they can flourish, where they don't sort of, where failure is celebrated rather than, something that people fear about, right? So that cultural change, if you're talking about Sarkari Naukri, I think this entire idea about, if fail, अगर मैं fail हो गया तो पता नहीं क्या हो जाएगा, right? So I think that imagination needs to go. I think, because generally speaking, that government job is a way to have stability in life. And there were multiple factors. The India of 1947 and India of 2026 is a very different sort of situations here. We have what it takes, to claim our rightful place. I think government has launched some fantastic initiatives, but everything, as I said, cannot be done by the government. I mean, government. I think a lot of the things, when I said AI, deep tech, what is stopping our corporates to invest heavily? Why don't we have our own Elon Musk? Elon Musk has so much money. He doesn't need to do anything. I think is 7, like we say in India, सात पुश्ते बैठ के खाएंगे. Even if he stops working right now, 7 generations will live like, kings and queens. But he's still wanting to go to Mars. He's still, launch something like, Starlink, which is such a fascinating project of, providing internet through satellites. So we need people like that in India who are not immune to taking risks. I think I would request all our corporates, the top business houses in India, to invest in deep tech. I'm sure partly they're already doing, but I don't hear any chat GPTs or Geminis coming from India. That's the sad reality, right? you have Chinese players, you have, American players, all the top, agents that our nationals use are all American by nature. So why can't we have an Indian company doing something like that? So I think that needs to change. So the answer, ma'am, is partly in higher education, but also partly public policy, partly taxation. We need to make it a national project that for the next 20 years or the next 15 years, we need our own Google and we need our own Facebook. We need companies who are world number one in deep tech. And AI and chip making, I think partly that's already there. I think I see a lot of people in the government talking about it, but we absolutely need to make our national objective number one.
So appears to be the right answer, but the more he's talking deep tech, the more I'm getting a little hopeless because most of them, those big bags of money, those deep pockets are lying there and they are heavily investing, giving us sleepless nights, because I'll just give you an example. As I was Googling in between, yesterday I left my team because we just advertised for our mess services and there were 372 bids. And jokingly, I told my team, can we do AI on this? And since yesterday we've been experimenting on it, so my team was putting it through Cloud and all. And the net result is 372 bids, which would have taken my team about 1.5 months, actually got sorted in a day's time. So, but the money went to Cloud. Now this is even more scary. That if even low-tech effort like looking into tender documents and checking eligibility, if it is seeping to that level, where is the hope for small players?
Just quickly add a comment there, the example that you used. Now, think of it, what's happening. $20, which is roughly 2,000 rupees INR per month. Many of these, do like many of us, use it. Corporates use it, coders are using it, which is again a problem because Indian white collar was IT. I was a former software engineer, so I'm really well read. So I used to be software engineer at some point in time in my career. And that job is sort of gone or going away. But the example that you quoted now, understand. So you're buying a subscription, the money is going to use company. And in the process, you're taking out jobs. I mean, I'm sure you're not, but those jobs are becoming redundant. So it's a double whammy of sorts, right? That the jobs are going and whatever the efficiency gains are, most of it, the US companies are taking. So that way it's problematic. I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of talk about AI taking jobs. I think, there is still time there because I don't think organizations are ready to completely apply the AI framework because they're just not ready. But the trends are not very encouraging because AI as a tech essentially is a optimized or efficiency oriented technology, by using which one person can do the job of 10 people, which is not great for a country like India, which has 1.5 billion people and 1 billion of them, 1 trillion, of them are in the young, sort of a 20 to 40 sort of age bracket, right? So it's a problematic. All the more reason that India needs to invest, the private sector, the corporate sector needs to invest heavily in here. Sorry.
The quick practical suggestion would be fine, it's always good to make an attempt to build a cloud or a Google or a Facebook and all that. Very good. But a zillion problems exist for which you need to find solution and you can build entrepreneurs around it. What education institution can do is provide सब ठीक होगा यार एक attempt to mark, make an effort, doesn't matter if it fails, both at home and at university or college. This mindset has to be cultivated. It's okay if you fail. Can one single most thing that can change things for a simple reason. The current generation, our children, are working for their passion, not certainly for their monthly bills to be paid. Our parents took care of roti, kapda, makan. We increased the size of makan and got little more comfort to it, maybe a better car or a better house and so on. This generation which we are working or expecting innovation from is essentially driven by करना क्या है, उनको डायरेक्शन दिखा दीजिए, सब ठीक होगा इतना बता दीजिए, या मैं हूं ये बता दीजिए. Don't worry if you fail, make an attempt. So at institution level, maybe if there is an intervention that we can plan, there has to be something called show the yatra. Go into the market, go into the hinterlands, list down what are the problem statements, and see if these problem statements can be addressed by finding a solution with technology, without technology, enabled by technology, or create a technology for it. We don't need more Googles, more clouds. We need more solutions for problems at the ground level using this technology. Somebody has built the highway, very good. You don't have to build a parallel highway. If you build one more layer, that's fine, that will help you in decongestion. But how do we solve those problems? 80% of the world is seeking problems to be solved. We need to create problem solvers who can harness technology and bring in the risk appetite. And we have to provide risk capital, not just in terms of money, but in terms of abhaydan. It's sab theek hoga. Shuru to kar. I think I rest my comments there. Thank you.
If I have to give my 2 cents on this, I would say, we don't know what is going to happen. That is for sure. I think I think it was one Professor Mukul, I think he was talking about in the earlier session. We don't know really what is going to happen 10 years down the line. The way things are changing, we don't know. But I'm a very optimist person. I am sure that things are going to be good. Things are going to be better. Now, the challenge is that these youngsters who are coming to business schools, what kind of exposure we are giving them? We need to develop sense of creativity. Your humanities faculties का more challenge. उनको hobbies develop करने दीजिए, खेलने दीजिए, जिससे उन्हें फेल होने की आदत हो. अगर हम हार गए तो कोई बुराई नहीं है, गेम है, खेल है. आज बच्चा मोबाइल में लगा हुआ है और वो इतना अपनी दुनिया में है, उसे बाहर की दुनिया के बारे में पता नहीं है, नेक्स्ट डोर क्या हो रहा है उसे पता नहीं. So can we really have that kind of ecosystem within the schools of this kind or anywhere where we can have exposure to different fields of studies through storytelling or through engaging with them and sharing, so that we are able to build that attitude in our youngsters, which can, this Gen Z, they have a lot of promises. As Vinitaji was saying, they don't fear things. Our people, we used to calculate a lot, but now they don't fear. They won't take this. I think we need to keep nurturing that in them. And if we are able to push it through, I'm sure things are going to be better than that. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Vijay, for your closing comments. One, we can trust humans are capable of creating enough problems. They're quite capable. So as long as we keep creating problems will need solutions, and solutions will need more thinkers, more creative people, more innovators, and more entrepreneurs. So that's one. So with that hope, let's all disperse. It has been a long day for, I think, especially for the host team. And on behalf of the entire panel, kudos to Rishi and his entire team for having great work throughout the world. Really enjoyed the sessions, and I'm so sure the audience would have enjoyed it as well. Meanwhile, if there's any suggestion, any comment, please feel free. As business school leaders, we're really looking forward to how do we make it happen on campus. Thanks once again to my panelists. Thank you so much.
Yes, well moderated. Thank you so much.
So that was that data.
So, what a magnificent way to bring the day's intellectual proceedings to a close. Innovation, entrepreneurship, risk, failure, resilience, scale, purpose, public policy. These are the words that have animated this full final conclave, and how fitting that they are also the words that animate India's most exciting economic story today. Our panelists did not just speak about promoting entrepreneurship, they modeled it through candid reflections, through bold ideas, and through a willingness to question the very assumption that have long governed management education in this country. Our deepest gratitude to our outstanding moderator, Professor Dr. Vinita Sahai, for guiding this session with such intellectual vitality and purpose, and our most heartfelt thanks to our distinguished panelists for the generosity of their time, the depth of their thought, and the warmth of their engagement with this audience today. May I now invite Professor Joshi to felicitate our panelists with a memento. So you may please hand over a token of gratitude, Professor Shailendra Singh. To Professor Vinita Sahai. To Professor Mayank Dhondial. To Dr. Ravi Kumar Jain. Professor Vijay Kumar Shrotia.
Can quickly come for a group picture.
With this, we bring the proceedings of the 4th June 2026 at the Global Business Research Conference to a close. What a day it has been. But the evening, however, is far from over. We look forward to your presence at the gala networking dinner. The dinner is arranged at the atrium. Request all of you to please join for the networking dinner. Thank you, everyone. This closes the day today.